another Watch Pro Originals interview. We're joined today, I'm delighted to say, by Danny Govberg. Danny is the Chief Executive of Govberg Jewelers in Philadelphia, a highly successful multi-brand luxury watch and jewellery retailer, but he's also probably best known these days as the co-founder of Watchbox, one of the world's largest pre-owned platforms and traders, buying and selling platforms for luxury watches, an industry thought to be worth anything between $5 and $15 billion. So we're going to find out how life under lockdown has been for Danny, but we're also going to find out what he's learned through the process and what changes he thinks, fundamental changes to the retail landscape might be for luxury watches in the future. And what's happening to the market in general? Because I've spoken to a number of people in the secondary market over the last few weeks, and I haven't got a straight, clear answer to the question of whether prices are going up, down, sideways. I feel a little bit as if the market is a little bit frozen in terms of its prices. Like there's deals going on, but it feels like the stock market for luxury watches is frozen a little bit, and we're waiting to see where it emerges and at what sort of prices.
Yeah, well, I think that when people think about the Rolex market, because that's a big piece of the pre-owned market, I think prices are down on the sport models about 10%, but far from any kind of a crash. There is no real crash. Same with Patek Philippe models. They're down from the most popular ones, but again, they're not crashing by any means. I think there's also, there is demand. You'd be shocked how many of them are selling across the platform of Rolex and Patek and many brands, even in these hard times. But also keep in mind, there's very little supply, Rob, coming on the market. Mm. So with Rolex being shut down, with Patek Philippe being shut down for the last number of months, there's no new supply. So whatever is being sold actually reducing the supply of product that's out there. So for right now, I can agree with you when you say it's like a hold pattern, but I think when you get away from those brands, there definitely is slippage in the pricing of product.
Mm. I was actually speaking to your business partner in the UAE this morning. Watchbox has a partnership with Ahmed Siddiqui and Sons in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and the chief commercial officer there, Mohammed Siddiqui, was saying that a lot of the activity is almost business to business between grey market traders. So there's not a lot of movement actually in terms of end customers buying these watches at the end of the day. They're almost shifting slowly between each other and waiting for the market to open up a little bit. Is that something you'll see?
Yeah, I don't see that. I think in that part of the world, there's a lot more shutdown of the customer. But for us, it's the opposite of that. We're seeing much more of our product now is going right to customers, like the consumer's actually buying. And it sounds, counter to what you're seeing with the pandemic and the stock market and fear. But when it comes to the buying of luxury timepieces right now, we're seeing end consumers are 100% active in buying timepieces across all brands, not just limited, to one or two brands. And I find that the B2B business is actually much slower because a lot of the guys are in different countries. It's harder to get them the product. And that they have, a lot of guys in B2B don't have end consumers. They really conduct their business B2B. Mm. So we're actually the majority of Watchbox's business is B2C. So we basically buy from consumers for the most part, and we sell to consumers for the most part. So that's, we see it's pretty vibrant actually in the market right now.
Mm. What do you think the impact will be of the production shutdown in Switzerland? I mean, pretty much every brand is affected, but certainly in terms of the volume and value of watches, the shut down from Rolex from the beginning of March. It's not reopened yet. Not reopened yet. I checked this morning. There's still no word from them reopening. Patek reopening in a limited capacity. Other brands that's way below their normal production capacity, 30%, 40%, that sort of thing. We're going to lose a lot of watches out of the supply side from this quarter. What impact do you think that'll have down the line?
I think it's only good. I'm not saying it's good that they're shut for the reasons that they're shut, just like it's not good that our retail stores are shut. But from a market standpoint, I believe that there's going to be shortages, but to some extent, they're shortages. It should be shortages. So I don't believe there's going to be as many people that want to buy a luxury timepiece coming out of this as there were before the pandemic, because there's unemployment, the businesses aren't as good, people are shut, people are scared. So with less product being produced, it'll just keep the market tight. And I think that a lot of people think that when things reopen, for instance, using Patek Philippe as an example, that there's just going to be a flood of product coming and every retailer is just going to be flooded. It's not going to be like that. There's actually going to be shortages coming and less product coming to retailers this year than they got last year. So I think what you're finding in these times of the shutdown is what is out there is being sold down, and what's being replaced is practically zero because nobody's receiving anything right now. So, I think that it's a good wait and see, but I don't think you're going to see overabundance of product coming from anybody. And I think also the groups have done a good job in 08 and 09 and 010 when we had the meltdown, financial meltdown. A lot of groups flooded the market with product for sales. Right now, I think for the most part, everybody's doing a good job of not doing that, of trying to keep brand equity and holding firm on liquidating product.
Yeah, I mean, I think we went into this crisis. The groups went into this crisis in a slightly different state of mind. That I don't think they would repeat those mistakes of flooding the grey market and then having to buy them back at enormous cost further down the line, having damaged their own brand. So I wouldn't expect that to happen. I think the supply will be more closely matched to what they believe will be demand.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job learning from the last time.
Yeah. So what lessons have you learned, sort of personally as a businessman during this lockdown? What sort of changes in consumer behavior, business behavior might be something that is sustained over the medium to long term?
Good question. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the future. My partner Justin has done a fantastic job of running day to day while I'm sitting at home. But I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what's going on. And I think what you're finding is trends that have taken place that have begun, and people sort of already know that they've begun, are now just moving at warp speed. So as far as creating content, like at Watchbox, our content's being watched more than ever. We have, market wrap and live interviews. Even what we're doing right now, Rob, I'd much rather consume a good interview than do a lot of reading. But we're doing a lot of shows, a lot of reviews of watches, customer roundtables. And I think what we're finding is even with the brands that were going vertical, they're now going to go vertical, a lot of the groups at a warp speed. Not so much Rolex and Patek, but I think you'll see that the groups will, between launching product to the world at one time, like Watches of Wonders, to having their e-commerce businesses thrive, to having their boutiques. And I think you'll see them, slowly diminish their reliance on their retail network. But I think that that's a trend that was happening anyway, if you looked at Audemars and you looked at Richard Mille. But I do think that my number one takeaway where Watchbox is going to be doubling down, we're going to be doubling down on all kinds of video content, video. We want to become an entertainment media company, but what I want to create out of Watchbox is watch community. And I think what we're finding is in this time of a pandemic, there's a lot of guys and women that are sitting at home around the world that just love watches. They're enthusiasts, no different than people that are wine enthusiasts or drinking more wine now than ever. And in other categories. So I think that what Watchbox is trying to do more than ever is be a center of watch community on a global level. And I think between our shows and our reviews and some commentary, we're trying to put really good content out to bring the watch community together. So that's one major trend. And I also think pre-owned, not that it's self-serving, but I think pre-owned is going to be more prevalent than ever because people are seeing it. The resale community between bags and different platforms that are out there are growing in demand. And I think when it comes to a wristwatch, for instance, if you want to buy an IWC, you can go to their boutique or you can go online and pick out between a few hundred new ones. But you can buy a pre-owned one and pick out from 1,000 pre-owned ones at half the price of a brand new one. So I think people are learning more. They're getting educated much more about timepieces than they ever have. So I think you'll see pre-owned become even more and more and more prevalent as time goes on.
And do you think in the primary market, in the new watch market, that consumer shopping behavior will change as well? Because e-commerce has not really taken off, even for major groups like Watches of Switzerland. Torno's pretty good, but it's mostly pre-owned, I think, in terms of their e-commerce sales. In general, people are still buying their watches by walking into their favorite local store, browsing the multi-brand cabinets, and walking away with the watch they want. I mean, does that sort of behavior look increasingly out of date?
You're breaking up here. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you fine. Are you back?
Wait, I don't hear you so good, Rob.
No, I think it's at your end because you're frozen a little bit.
Is it your connection or mine?
I suspect it's yours. Mine's usually pretty stable. I can see you. I can hear you. Are you moving? You're moving about a bit now, so maybe it's back.
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay. I was just saying that. Do you think that customers, when they're looking for new watches, will behave in the same way? Because up until now, really, e-commerce has been a feeder into people's stores. So you would browse online, you do a lot of research, you'd see who's selling the watches that you're after, but ultimately, at some point, you're going to go into the store and try it on and everything else. And therefore, retail was still about having the best position, the best location, the most luxurious environment, the best trained staff. I mean, do you think that the way that consumers will shop for watches, for new watches in the future, will be changed forever by this experience?
Again, I think that a trend that was coming of people calling on a phone and doing research online and not going to a retail store is just moving much quicker now. So, of course, more watches are going to be sold at a retail store or at a brick and mortar store than were. But I think what you're going to find is many, many, many more watches now will be sold through e-commerce or what I call personal commerce with a phone, because two things are happening. One, the customer is much more educated to what they want to buy. So the coming to a brick and mortar store to learn and say, oh, I'm looking for a nice watch, I have no clue what I want to buy, that's going away. So as the brands like Watches of Wonders, Richemont Group, and many others, and Breitling launch their new product digitally to the world, that's what people want. So you're not going to have to carry as much. The selections in the stores are going to be much narrower because people are going to already know what they want. So when you do go to the store to try it on, of course you're going to go and you're going to want to try it on. But more and more, certain stores don't even have what you want. So it's not like you just walk into a store today and say, I'm here to look at Nautiluses for Patek Philippe, or I'm here to look at sport models. That trend has been over for a long time. You're lucky to get on some companies' don't even have wait lists. So more and more you're learning what you want, and then you go to the store for a nice luxury experience when it finally does arrive and you've waited for it. But I do think that the real thing that's changing is the education of the customer. The customer is being educated. They know what they want, and they can almost get as good a luxury experience by talking to somebody on the phone about a timepiece than they can driving 40 minutes into a store that who even knows now what that experience is going to be. You may walk into a store and there's going to be somebody sitting behind the counter with a mask on, taking your temperature before you walked in, making sure you're wearing a mask, making sure you put gloves on. They're going to be putting gloves on. So the whole luxury experience is going to be redefined at a retail level, at least for the next year, I think, until there's a vaccine.
Well, we hope that we don't all spend years with personal protective equipment between us, between each other, and I hope to be able to see you face to face and share a glass of wine with you soon, Danny. But I share your concerns that it could take a little while.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Rob, that we're going to do. I've been wanting to do it for a while. Is we're going to go to it's just slipped my mind. We're going to go to an appointment only basis at our retail level. Because for a long time, I've been thinking that I make a reservation to go to a restaurant, and I make, appointments to get my hair. You make an appointment for a doctor. You make so many appointments. You don't even realize how many areas in life you're making an appointment or a reservation. If you break your Apple phone now, you have to make a reservation to get your Apple phone fixed. So I think the days of just walking into a store at 10 o'clock in the morning, not knowing who the person is, having to have an entire staff there waiting for somebody to come in because they decided to come at 5 after 10 to see something for $50,000 or $40,000. For us, I'm going to change that. I'm going to have it by appointment only. I'm going to be ready for the customer when they come with a real luxury experience. I'm going to be able to social distance people so that if somebody does come in, they don't have to worry that there's somebody that's walking right behind them or on top of them. We can literally seat people in a very comfortable way. And even for repairs, I just don't think that I have to, have an entire team waiting for somebody to walk in at 5 after 12 or 10 after 12, because that's when they decided to drop off their repair. But because I can't take my Apple Watch in or my Apple phone in and just get it repaired anymore. I got to have an appointment. So I think that I'm going to really test by appointment only in luxury. And I believe that the customer who makes the appointment will end up with a much, much better experience because, one, we'll be prepared for them. We'll know what they're looking for. We can bring things in for them. We can match them with the right sales associate that may be a better expert in the product that they're looking for. So I think that's another trend that's going to come from this pandemic, is that our luxury experience is going to be by appointment, not just whenever the customer decides to show up.
I mean, that's a hugely fundamental change, because by extension from what you're saying, you don't necessarily need to be paying for the most expensive positions when it comes to real estate. You don't have to be in the highest traffic malls or the most luxurious part of a particular city or whatever. You don't need to be at street level necessarily. You could be, on the first or second floor and seeing your customers sitting on armchairs and sofas and having a...
I think to some extent the luxury real estate is also a billboard. So if you said to me, it's two-pronged. Luxury real estate at the best locations is about, brands being seen, and it sends a message that it's a billboard for the best brands in the world. As far as the luxury sale and the experience that you can give a customer, so you can still achieve that. Apple has, like I said, Apple has great real estate. yet you got to make an appointment to get your phone fixed. And more, if you go into Apple during many times of the day, you wait 40 minutes or 50 minutes for a sales associate. It's not a luxury experience. So to me, I may have the best location in Philadelphia, and that only sets the stage for when somebody wants to come and buy a $20,000 Rolex or a $10,000 Rolex. So what if they come at 10 o'clock and somebody's there to greet them and sit them down and make them feel safe and maybe know what they want, so that if we don't have it in stock, we're still able to prepare a nice presentation for that person, other than a customer showing up and we don't even know many times who they are. Like, it's almost like it's backwards. So I'm going to take this time to change some things up a little bit when it comes to retail.
I think that appointment only is a good idea. In fact, I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago. I mean, you could almost make the appointment itself a luxury item to acquire. I.e., there's only so many appointments you can have in a day, and therefore you create scarcity. And we all know that luxury and scarcity go hand in hand. So I think it's a very interesting direction to go in.
And I think that what you'll find, it'll actually be a much better customer experience too. Yeah,
no, I tend to agree with that. And going back to the pre-owned side of things, I remember when you and I were first talking, and I didn't know too much about what was going in pre-owned and the secondary market and all that sort of thing. And we were bandy about figures like it being worth $5 billion a year. I've heard, in the intervening years, I've heard figures of $15 billion a year. Nobody really knows for sure, but I don't think anybody's imagining these days that it's insignificant. I think everybody now appreciates the sheer scale of the opportunity. How have you adapted and positioned yourself to take maximum advantage of the size of that market now, and the acceptance and the maturity of that market?
It's a good question. What we've tried to do is coming from the primary business. One, we've tried to give really good service, have our associates be knowledgeable, and most importantly, bring the product up to a standard that anybody receiving a watch from us would be proud to receive it. What we've also tried to do is make markets so that if somebody buys a watch from us, they can feel comfortable that the price is fair. We're pretty transparent. And we're also pretty fair when it comes to repurchasing watches back from clients or from anybody that's looking to sell a timepiece. And when we do buy a timepiece from the public, we then put it into a perfect condition when it goes for resale. But as far as the size of the market, what's happening is there's just more pre-owned watches that are being bought and sold each year as the consumer becomes more educated. So that's where the internet, digital marketing, people reading, more community as far as watch lovers out there, they're just more educated to the product, so that more people have watches in their drawers they don't wear, and more people are looking for pieces that are discontinued or they're not made anymore. So the market for pre-owned timepieces is just expanding at a great rate, just at a much faster rate than new. And also, keep in mind, every new watch that gets launched this year that you see at Watches of Wonders and other launches that are coming are just pre-owned next year. So nobody throws away a watch. There is no watches are like Cougarans in a way. Once a Cougaran is minted, nobody ever takes a gold Cougaran and throws it away. So it's just more gold in the world. It's like gold inflation. So in a way, there's pre-owned watch inflation each year. For every new Rolex that gets made or gets birthed, nobody's throwing out the 10-year-old one, the 20-year-old one. They're not going in the trash can. In fact, a lot of the 30-year-old ones and 40-year-old ones are worth more money today. So every new watch that gets birthed from a manufacturer is just another watch on the market for the future. So I feel very confident that pre-owned is going to continue to thrive as more and more people become educated that it's even alternative. Most people, you'd be shocked, Rob, how many people don't know that they can even buy pre-owned with any kind of safety. So, I think the market's huge. I think there's a lot of watches out there. I do know if you take the sales of all the watches that were just going to be sold this year, they're all pre-owned next year. So how many billions of dollars that is, I don't know. I just know that more and more people every day are coming to the world of pre-owned and feeling comfortable with it.
And finally, I guess, what's your feeling about the pace at which things are going to open up? I know that it's different state governors have different policies. It's not a federal matter particularly, and your president seems to have washed his hands of the decision-making process over that. But in Philadelphia, are you feeling like you're close to people being back on the streets and going shopping again?
I can't wait. I think that it's state by state, and I think it's really more about person by person now. So I do believe that you're going to see the states open up, and that's coming now, over the next month. I think you'll see, or the next 6 weeks, you'll see most of all the states will be open to some extent. It's more about the individual person opening up. Some people are going to stay in and not go out as much. Some people are going to go out a lot. Restaurants are going to open, but nobody really knows. I mean, there's some are saying there's going to be open to 25% capacity. I know what we are going to do for safety is we're not going to allow that many people into the store at one time, maybe 2 or 3. We're going to social distance people, and we're going to look towards our employee safety. So we're not going to have everybody in the store on one shift, so that if somebody does get sick or somebody doesn't feel well, they can stay home. And if somebody does catch the virus, we can, self-quarantine that shift so that we don't just go out of business again. So I think that it's very much a wait and see. But one thing for sure, the states are opening up to some extent, and I think I just hope everybody stays safe with it.
Okay, well, we're running out of time here, but I mean, I've heard very, very few stories of casualties in terms of retailers going bust. There's been 1 or 2 brands go bust in Switzerland. I mean, are there a bunch of zombie companies out there that are clinging on, and actually things might get worse? They could, this does happen in downturns, that people cling on for a few months and then they run out of cash, or they run out of support from the authorities or their banks or whatever, and the redundancies can come deeper into the downturn. Do you think that's something that we might see?
I think there may be some with bigger institutions. One thing nice about the jewelry industry is that people know their local communities, and when they finally do reopen, one thing about jewelry and watches are they don't go bad. So when somebody reopens, their bracelets are their bracelets, their watches are their watches. They're not reopening to fashion, where a lot of the product that they reopen to no longer has value. So I do think that there won't be as many retailers going out of business as you think. I think things are going to be slow. They're going to have to be more connected to their customer. They're going to call their customer. They'll figure out how to make a sale, because gift giving for Mother's Day or for birthdays and anniversaries and celebratory events is going to continue. I don't believe that they're going away. Do I think that big institutions like department stores are somewhat in trouble? I think you read that in the news because they've been in trouble for a long time. That's just part of another trend that is speeding up. So they might have been in sort of trouble. Now they're in bigger trouble. Some of these big department stores that they're just, they're just being put out to pasture due to e-commerce, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, Danny. Well, I think the Zoom thing is telling me our time is up for now. So it's always great to talk to you. Can't wait to catch up with you again in Philadelphia or over here in Europe. But for now, stay safe, and
Yeah, you too, Rob. This was great.
on the other side.
Okay, you got it, pal.
Thanks. See ya.